Smile, Marcus. You are about to receive a generous gift. We didn't come here for your gifts. Your studio is failing.
Leave her out of this.
3 years ago, Marcus gave me every design. He'll admit it, or I'll cancel your grant. Marcus, why is your name on that page? Choose your pride or her future.
I won't sign a lie.
A silver service cart rolled across the marble floor. Lillian stopped beside Camille and placed a brass key with a navy blue mark on the table. "Mrs.
Ashford," she said, "you told me to destroy what was left in the blue room." Camille's smile disappeared. "Remove her." "I didn't destroy it." As security seized Lillian's arms, she looked directly at me. "Open the model before midnight." Camille pointed toward the door. "That key opens nothing." I closed my hand around it. "Then why are you afraid of it?" She didn't answer me. She answered the room instead, turning her back on the question and raising her glass to 400 guests, as if a housekeeper hadn't just been dragged out of her own workplace in front of them. 2 men in dark suits walked Nora and me across that marble floor and out through the tall glass doors of Ashford House like we were shoplifters. But right before the doors closed behind us, I saw something the guests didn't. I saw Camille pull her project manager close, cover the microphone on her lapel, and point toward the exhibition wing. The wing where the original architectural model of Ashford House sat in a lighted case. The manager checked his watch and nodded. Whatever she told him, she wanted it done before midnight. The same deadline Lillian had given me. In the car, Nora sat with the torn halves of her grant agreement in her lap. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The brass key was still in my fist, warm now, the little navy dot catching the streetlights. "Marcus," her voice was quiet, which was worse than shouting. "Why is your name on that transfer?" I need to tell you something about myself here, because it's the reason everything that follows happened the way it did. I grew up in a house where you didn't air your business. My father restored old buildings for 40 years, and when clients cheated him, and they did, he'd tighten his jaw, finish the job, and never say a word in public. He taught me that dignity meant silence, that the truth would find its own way into the room if you just waited long enough. So when Nora asked me that question, I gave her half an answer. "I signed an agreement," I said, "but it's not the story she just told." She looked at me. She's run a job training center for 11 years, sat across from hundreds of adults starting their lives over, and she can hear the difference between a truth and a partial truth the way I can read a wall and know what's behind the plaster. "That's not an answer," she said. "That's a door you're holding shut." She was right, and I still didn't open it. Instead, I drove back to Ashford House, not to the ballroom, to the public exhibition wing, which stayed open until 11 for hotel guests. I didn't sneak in. I walked through the front entrance of the gallery like any visitor, past framed photographs of Camille cutting ribbons, Camille standing alone in front of buildings she called her vision, and there, in a lighted glass case, was the model. I built that model with my own hands 14 years ago, before Ashford House was anything but a bank loan and a hillside. 3 months of nights, basswood and brass, and hidden in the base, under the service wing, I'd built a compartment, the kind of private joke architects have hidden in their work for centuries. I'd made one key for it, brass with a dot of navy enamel so I could find it in a drawer.
The case wasn't locked. It was display glass, lifted from a frame. I raised it, turned the model gently on its base, and slid the key into a seam that looked like a foundation joint. It turned like I'd oiled it yesterday. Inside the compartment, wrapped in cloth, I found 4 things. A photograph, old and curling. Me at 30, sleeves rolled, bent over this very model on a work table, sawdust on my forearms. Someone had written a date on the back.
A folded sheet of material codes in my handwriting, the numbering system I'd invented for the project, every custom order tagged with my initials. A printed inventory card, the kind used for cataloged storage. Service Archive, Box 27. And beneath the box number, a note in small, careful script. Moved by CA order. I stood there in that empty gallery, holding proof that I hadn't imagined my own life. And I understood at the same moment that none of it was enough. A photograph proves I built a model. It doesn't prove I designed a resort. Material codes prove a system existed. They don't prove who owned the ideas that system carried. What I really held was a question. Where was Box 27? And why had someone with the initials CA ordered it moved? I photographed everything, put the compartment's contents in my jacket, and left through the same public door I'd entered. By 9 the next morning, Camille's answer arrived by courier. It was a letter from her attorneys, 3 pages of polished threat. I was barred from every Ashford property, effective immediately. I was accused of removing items from a corporate exhibition, and the brass key, my key, cut with my hands in my father's shop, was declared company property to be surrendered within 7 days. They had cameras in that gallery. They knew exactly what I'd found. And instead of asking what it meant, Camille was building a fence around it. That afternoon, the first article appeared. A business site that covered her hotels ran the headline, "Jealous Ex-Husband Disrupts Billionaire Founder's Gala." There was a photograph of me being escorted out, jaw tight, and not one frame of Camille tearing a grant agreement in half in front of 400 witnesses. By the end of the week, I learned what it means when a billionaire decides to tell your story for you. Camille's team released a video of the gala, edited, of course. Every second of her humiliating Nora was gone. What remained was me, stepping toward the stage, voice raised, security converging. Cut that way, I looked exactly like the headline. An unstable man, a bitter footnote to a great woman's success. 2 of my studio's clients called that week. Both used the same phrase, "until things settle down," and postponed their projects. My studio restores community buildings on small contracts and thin margins. 2 postponements meant I couldn't make payroll past October. Nora's board called an emergency meeting. Her center leases its building inside the Heritage District, the same district Camille's new $180 million development would control. Her board members weren't cruel, just frightened. They asked her gently whether her engagement was becoming a liability to 200 students. And through all of it, I kept working the only thread I had, Box 27. I spread everything across my drafting table. The inventory card, the material codes, 14 years of my own files. And I noticed something about that card that changed the shape of the whole question. The catalog number wasn't in the architecture department's format. I'd built that format. I'd know it in my sleep.
This card used the household office's system, the numbering Ashford House staff used for linens, silver, service records. The Blue Room archive hadn't been handled by Camille's design team at all. It had been handled by household staff, by people like Lillian. The next day, I tracked down Ray, a retired fabricator who'd made custom brass fittings for the original project. He met me at a diner, looked at my material codes for 10 seconds, and slid the sheet back. "MR," he said. "Marcus Reed. Every special order I ran for that place came tagged with your initials, off your sketches. Mrs. Ashford approved the invoices."
That's all she touched. "Would you say that publicly?" He looked at his coffee. "I've got a pension, Marcus. My son works for one of her contractors." He wasn't refusing. He was telling me the price. And he added one thing that mattered. He'd never been in the ownership meetings. He could confirm the system was mine. He couldn't confirm the designs were. That night, an unsigned text message arrived from a number that no longer worked an hour later. "Don't look for box 27. Look for who signed it out of the house." I was still staring at that message when Nora found the agreement. She'd been at my studio, boxing up files to help me prepare for whatever legal fight was coming. And it was there in a folder I should have sealed years ago. The full transfer agreement, all 11 pages, my signature on the last one. She read it standing up, all of it. Then she set it on the drafting table and said, "Tell me the whole thing. Not the version that protects me, not the version that protects you." So I finally opened the door. 12 years ago, when Camille and I were still married, her company hit a wall. A lender demanded clean intellectual property, every design, every concept owned by the corporation, no loose ends. Camille came to me with the papers and a warning. If the financing collapsed, the first casualty would be the small apprentice studio we'd folded into the company. My father's studio. The one he'd spent his life building. The one whose 6 employees had known me since I was a boy sweeping their floors. "It's just paperwork," she'd said. "It's all ours anyway. We're married, Marcus. What's a name on a drawing between us?" I believed the company was ours. I believed the marriage would last. I believed my name mattered less than keeping my father's people employed. So I signed. And I didn't read it the way I'd read a contract from a stranger, because she wasn't a stranger. The language was broader than anything she described. Every design, every concept, past and future, credited to the corporation, which meant, in practice, credited to her. 3 years ago, when the marriage ended, her lawyers put that agreement on the table. I could fight it in public, dragging my father's name and 6 employees into a scandal against lawyers she paid more in a month than I earned in a year, or walk away quietly with my studio and my silence. I chose silence. I told myself it was dignity. Nora listened to all of it without moving. When I finished, she didn't yell. What she said was worse. "Camille took your work," she said, "but you took my right to the truth. I've been standing next to you at galas, at dinners, defending you to my board, and I didn't even know what I was defending." She picked up her coat. "I'm not leaving, but I'm not planning a wedding with a man who decides what I get to know. We're pausing it, all of it, until I can trust that you'll hand me the truth, even when it's ugly." What I didn't know What I wouldn't learn until later was that Camille had already reached her privately. A restored grant, full funding, everything her center needed. All Nora had to do was release a statement saying the center had no connection to my dispute. Nora had refused, and she hadn't told me because after the transfer agreement, she wasn't sure she owed me her secrets anymore. That week, alone in my studio, I did what I do when I can't sleep. I studied Camille's new development, the plans, the renderings, the press kit. On page 14 of her design brochure, I stopped breathing. Rooms that remember their makers. That concept, workers' names cast into thresholds, etched into service corridors, so the invisible people who build a place are never invisible again. I created it. I never published it. I presented it exactly once in a private design session, and every note from that session lived in one place, the Blue Room Archive. Camille wasn't just claiming my past. She was quarrying my future, and she was doing it from a room she'd ordered someone to burn. That was the moment I stopped defending and started hunting. Over the next 2 weeks, I built 3 advantages, one careful piece at a time. The first came from a technician named Dominic, who'd run audiovisual for Camille's early investor presentations. He'd kept his old drives the way technicians do, out of habit, not intent. Buried in a folder from 11 years back, he found a rehearsal recording, and on it, unmistakably, was my voice. Me, walking an empty room, describing the core idea of Ashford House. The service corridors designed wider than code required so the staff could move with dignity instead of squeezing past each other like an apology. And the concept, in my own words, years before Camille ever spoke it into a microphone. Rooms that remember their makers. The file was damaged. The first 4 minutes were gone, and it had passed through too many hands over too many years to be courtroom clean. But it proved one thing beyond argument. The concept existed, in my voice, long before her press kit. The second advantage was the suppliers. Ray came back bringing Teresa, who'd milled the custom thresholds. Both signed short statements. The MR codes were mine, the special orders came from my sketches, and Camille's involvement was budgets and invoices, not authorship. The third felt like a miracle. Walter Boone, the original project director, retired now, living 2 states away, agreed to speak at the Heritage Council's ethics review. He'd sat in the design sessions. He'd watched me lead them. "I'm 71, he told me on the phone. "What's she going to do? Fire me from my garden?" And the pieces kept falling toward me. An independent journalist agreed to review my files. The Heritage Council, the public body that had to approve Camille's $180 million development agreement, granted me a formal hearing before the signing. Nora read the supplier statements at my kitchen table, and for the first time in weeks, looked at me the way she used to. Then, on a Tuesday night, a voicemail arrived from a number I didn't recognize. 14 seconds. A voice I knew immediately. Steady, precise, unhurried. "Mr. Reed, Box 27 was never destroyed. Be careful who you tell. Lillian." No callback number. When I dialed it, the line was dead. Camille felt the ground shifting, and she did what she always does when she can't control a story. She attacked the storytellers. Cease and desist letters landed on Ray and Teresa within days. Thick envelopes citing confidentiality clauses from contracts they'd signed a decade ago. Her spokesperson told a reporter I was pressuring elderly former vendors.
turning my witnesses into my victims in a single sentence. And then she invited me to talk. A private dining room downtown. I was still banned from her properties, a detail her assistant mentioned twice. She arrived in a structured pink suit, hair in that immaculate bun, and wasted no time on pleasantries. "You've become expensive, Marcus," she said. "So let me make you an offer a rational man would take. Your name restored on selected portions of the archive. A settlement for your studio, generous. Nora's grant, fully reinstated." She folded her hands. "In exchange, the investigation ends. You make no claims about any other contractors, and you never request access to the household archive." There it was. Not one condition about me. 2 conditions about everyone else. "You're not afraid I'll get my credit back," I said slowly. "You're afraid of what the archive shows about how many times you've done this?" Her expression didn't change, which is how I knew I was right. "Take the offer," she said. "You've seen what 1 week costs you. Imagine a year." I stood up. "I spent 12 years signing what you put in front of me. I'm done." The ethics review was scheduled for exactly 48 hours before the signing ceremony. And when that morning came, for the first time since the gala, the room belonged to me. The council accepted the rehearsal recording into consideration. The supplier codes went into the official record, sworn statements attached. Walter Boone sat in the second row in a gray suit, ready to testify. And when Camille's counsel objected to everything on procedure, the council chair, a small, patient woman who'd clearly read every page, asked Camille a question that made the whole room go still. "Ms. Ashford, if Mr. Reed had no creative role, why do his personal codes appear at every stage of the design record?" Camille smiled and answered a different question. Everyone noticed. The council instructed her to suspend her media campaign about authorship pending review. Her jaw tightened when they said it. In 3 years, I had never seen anyone tell Camille Ashford to stop talking. Nora sat behind me through all of it. Her ring finger was bare, but she was there. Walking out for the lunch recess, I let myself believe it. The evidence was in. The witness was ready. The truth was doing what my father always promised it would do, finding its own way into the room. Then Camille's lead attorney crossed the lobby and handed the council clerk a new folder, thick and neatly tabbed, and I watched the chairwoman's face change as she read the first page. Everything came apart in a single afternoon. First, the recording. Camille's folder proved the rehearsal file had been stored years ago on a company laptop, a laptop I'd had access to. Her forensic consultant wouldn't say the file was altered. He said it could not be verified as unaltered, which in a hearing room is the same word wearing a suit. The council didn't throw it out. They did something quieter and worse. They set it aside as unreliable. Then the model. Word came during the recess that the exhibition model of Ashford House had been damaged beyond repair during an emergency relocation ordered for its own protection. The base, the compartment, the seam, the physical proof my key fit anything at all, was gone. And here's what broke something in me. They'd known exactly where to find it, because 2 weeks earlier my own lawyer had sent a formal preservation request describing the model and its location. I had trusted the process. The process had handed Camille a map. Then the witnesses.
Walter Boone took the stand after lunch, and he was not the man from the phone call. Camille's attorneys had visited him the night before to refresh his memory about his non-disclosure agreement. Suddenly, he was unsure whether the design sessions he'd described to me had happened that way at all. "It was a long time ago," he said, not meeting my eyes. Ray stopped answering his phone. Teresa's lawyer sent a one-line letter withdrawing her statement, and Lillian was fired that same week. "Breach of trust," the termination said. She lost her position, her staff housing, her health coverage, 22 years of service converted into a security escort to the curb. Every number I had for her went dead. Then Camille played her last card, and it was mine. On the screen, blown up for the whole council, an email in my name from the last year of our marriage. One line. "Use whatever you need. I don't care whose name is on it." It was real. I wrote it. I wrote it at midnight during the worst month of our marriage, when she was fighting to close a deal and I was fighting to keep us from coming apart. And I thought that if I just gave enough, surrendered enough, wanted nothing enough, I could love us back to solid ground. I know now what I was actually writing. I was writing her alibi. The council closed my complaint. Insufficient basis to delay the development agreement. The $180 million signing would proceed in 3 days, live-streamed, a celebration. Nora waited for me by my car. She'd heard about the preservation request, that my letter had led them straight to the model. She held out her hand, and in her palm was the engagement ring. "I'm not doing this because of the scandal," she said, and her voice was steady in the way people are steady when they've been crying alone and finished before they came to find you. "I could stand next to you through any scandal, but you knew that model was the heart of everything, and you handled it your way, quietly, through channels, without telling me, without telling anyone, because you still believe that if you just follow the rules and stay silent, the truth protects itself." She closed my fingers around the ring. "I can't marry a man who still decides which truths I'm allowed to survive." She left me standing in a parking garage with a ring in my fist and nothing else. No evidence, no witnesses, no hearing, no wedding. I drove to the studio because I had nowhere else to go. The lights were off. The postponement letters were still on the desk. And in the middle of my drafting table, where I could not possibly miss it, someone had left a single white service glove. Lillian's. The kind she'd worn for 22 years, polishing silver for a woman who called her the Maid. Inside the glove, folded into a small, precise square, was a storage rental receipt, a self-storage facility across town, paid in cash. It had expired 8 years ago. I sat with that receipt all night, and I want to tell you it handed me the answer. It didn't. An expired receipt opens nothing. What it told me was simpler and heavier. 8 years ago, around the time the Blue Room was ordered emptied, Lillian Hart had rented a storage unit with her own money, a housekeeper's salary, cash, off the books of the family she served. She hadn't burned the archive. She'd carried it out on a service cart
one load at a time, and paid to protect it herself. For 8 years, for a man who'd never once asked how she was doing. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, staring at that receipt, I finally asked the right question. For weeks, my question had been, how do I prove the designs are mine? That question had lost. It lost because it was small, and because it was still, underneath everything, about me. The real question was this: how many people had to disappear from the story so that Camille Ashford could stand alone on a stage? Suppliers with sealed lips, a project director frightened back into silence at 71, a housekeeper who'd spent her own wages guarding other people's work. My concept wasn't stolen once. It was harvested by a system, and the system was still running, about to be locked inside a $180 million contract where no auditor would ever reach it. So I changed everything. New objective, not my credit, the system. Expose how names had been erased, all of them, and stop the Heritage District from being built on that erasure. If my own name came back in the process, fine. If it didn't, the others still mattered. New method. No more waiting for a smoking gun. No more trusting one recording or one witness that Camille could shatter with a folder. Instead, I built what I know how to build. A structure. Many small pieces independently standing, so that knocking down any one of them left the rest upright. A public timeline, plain enough for anyone to follow. When each idea appeared, what I submitted, when the authorship changed in the records, and who else got overwritten along the way. A physical reconstruction, because paper can be forged, but buildings don't lie. And I am one of the few people alive who can make a building testify. And letters. I wrote to every contractor, designer, and craftsman I could trace from those early projects, demanding nothing. Each letter held 3 things: a full account of my own failure. I signed, I stayed silent, my silence helped the machine run. A plan for protecting their identities if they chose to speak, and the right to withdraw at any moment, no questions asked. I would not do to them what had been done to Walter Boone. Then I set up a camera in my empty studio, sat down in my work jacket, and recorded a video I didn't release. In it, I admitted everything: the transfer, the signature, the email, the years of silence I'd dressed up as dignity, the things I'd hidden from Nora because I was ashamed. I recorded it not as strategy, but as a door I was closing behind me, because a man who plans to tell the truth about everyone else had better be finished hiding the truth about himself. The last thing was the hardest. I printed everything: the agreement, the timeline, the letters, my own confession, boxed it, drove to Nora's apartment, set it outside her door, and texted one line: everything I know, including what makes me look worst. No conditions. You decide what you do with it. And with me. She called 2 days later. Her voice was careful. I read all of it, she said. Twice. A long pause. For the first time since I've known you, you're giving me a choice instead of a conclusion. She didn't put the ring back on, but she asked what I was planning, and when I told her, she said 4 words that carried me through the rest. Then do it right. Camille, meanwhile, sent an invitation. Heavy cardstock, gold edging. The signing ceremony for the Heritage District Development Agreement, to be live streamed.
Her assistant followed with a phone call and the real message. If I attended and delivered a public apology for the gala, for the false claims, for the disruption, Camille would restore Nora's grant in full that same afternoon. I accepted the invitation. I declined the apology. Her assistant repeated the offer slower, as if I'd misheard. "I'll be there," I said. "Tell her I'm bringing my own remarks." Then I went to work on the plan itself. 3 parts. Part 1, the reconstruction. In my studio, over 4 days and 3 nights, I rebuilt a 12-foot section of the Ashford House service corridor, full scale, from the original material codes and my own drawings. Not to claim it proved ownership. It proved something narrower and sharper, that the official story had holes. Because there are decisions in that corridor that make no sense unless you know why they were made, and the woman claiming to be its sole creator had never once explained them in 14 years of interviews, because she couldn't. Part 2. The timeline. Mounted on simple boards, a retired school teacher could follow at a glance. No legal language, dates, documents, names, what the rule is, what was manipulated, who was harmed. Part 3. The witnesses, if any chose to come. 3 had written back. None had committed. I would not push. And then there was the thing that could end it all in one stroke, the reason I couldn't sleep the night before the ceremony. I still had a voice message from the last year of our marriage. Camille, tired and unguarded, on my old phone. "People don't remember who drew the room. They remember who owns it." In front of a live stream, that recording would gut her. It was her whole philosophy in her own voice. And it had been said to her husband in private, in a moment she believed belonged only to us. It proved her character, not any specific act. Playing it would win the crowd and cost me the thing I was trying to become. Nora was at the studio when I made the decision. I told her I wasn't using it. "You could lose because of that choice," she said. Not arguing, measuring. "If I have to turn my marriage into a weapon to win," I said, "then I haven't changed. I've just switched sides in the same war." She looked at me for a long moment, and something in her face settled. One loose end remained. The storage facility from Lillian's receipt. I drove out there the day before the ceremony, and the manager confirmed what the paperwork showed. The unit had been rented by an L. Hart, paid in cash, for years, and emptied 6 months ago. Everything transferred out by a bonded archival courier service. Sealed transfer, professional custody, destination confidential. 6 months ago, before the gala, before the key. Lillian had seen something coming and moved the archive beyond anyone's reach, including mine. 1 hour before the ceremony, as I was loading the corridor section into a rented truck, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "I will come, but you must tell the part of the truth that makes you look bad before I tell the part that makes her look bad. That is my condition. L.H." I typed back one word. Agreed. The signing ceremony filled the grand hall of the Heritage District's old civic building, the very building whose future was on the table. Cameras on risers, council members in the front row, investors, press, and a live stream counter climbing past 40,000. Camille stood at the podium in a pale pink couture gown, black hair in that flawless bun, radiant
and absolutely in command.
I came in a midnight navy suit and set up my corridor section and timeline boards in the space the council had grudgingly granted me for public comment. Camille's people had put me in the corner. That was fine. Truth doesn't need center stage. It needs a door. She opened with grace, with vision, with the word community a dozen times. And then, smiling, she called Nora to the stage. "Before we sign," Camille announced, "I want to heal an old wound. The Ellis Vocational Center's grant, fully restored." Applause. She handed Nora a leather folder, and beside the grant was a single printed page, a statement. I read the page later, and so did everyone else. Nora was to declare that I had dragged her center into a personal dispute, that Camille had never mistreated her, and that the gala had been a misunderstanding. Nora looked at the statement. Then she stepped to the microphone, and my heart stopped. "I haven't decided when I'm getting married," she said. "But I have decided this. No one gets to use my students' future to buy my silence." She set the statement down, kept the grant folder closed, and walked off the stage. Not to Camille's side, and not to mine. To the truth's side. There's a difference, and she wanted the room to see it. Camille recovered in a breath, the way only she can. "Then let's address the disruption directly." The screens lit up. My signature on the transfer agreement. The email. "Use whatever you need. I don't care whose name is on it." Security footage of me at the exhibition case, key in hand. Walter Boone's recantation, quoted in full. "A man voluntarily gives everything away," she said to 40,000 viewers. "And then, when the woman he gave it to succeeds beyond his imagination, he wants it back." I'll ask the question everyone here is thinking. Does he have that right? The room shifted toward her. I felt it like weather. Then it was my turn at the microphone, and I did the thing she was not prepared for. I agreed with her evidence. "Everything you just saw is real," I said. "I signed that agreement. I wrote that email. I chose silence for 12 years and called it dignity. I hid the worst of it from the woman I love because I was ashamed. And I spent the last month trying to prove Camille Ashford wrong without admitting that my silence was one of the bricks she built with. I'm not here as a perfect victim. There's no such thing in this story." The room went very quiet. Camille's timeline needed me defensive. I'd just stepped off it. "So don't take my word for anything," I said. "Take the buildings." I walked them through the corridor section. 3 steps, the way I'd explain it to my father's crew. First, the rule. Service corridors in luxury resorts are built to minimum code width. Invisible space earns no revenue. Second, the deviation. Ashford House's corridors are 40% wider than code, with cast bronze thresholds at every junction. Expensive, inexplicable. Third, the reason, because each of those thresholds carries names. The masons, the electricians, the framers cast into the metal underfoot, so the people who built the place would walk over their own names every working day. Rooms that remember their makers. That detail exists in the physical building, I said. You can go touch it tonight. And it appears nowhere in 14 years of Ms. Ashford's design records, interviews, or archives. She has never explained it. I'm suggesting she can't.
Camille's voice came back cool and surgical. Knowing a building isn't owning it, Marcus. You're right, I said. And owning a building doesn't mean you made everything inside it. That was the moment the service entrance opened.
Lillian Hart walked in, not in uniform for the first time in 22 years, but in a plain gray coat, pushing the silver service cart from the gala. And the cart wasn't carrying one mysterious box. It was stacked, 14 bound household service logs, delivery receipts, archive transfer forms, courier documents, and in the center, sealed in a wooden crate, the original presentation model of Ashford House, the first one, the one I'd built before the exhibition copy, the one everyone believed was long gone. "Security," Camille said quietly into her microphone. 2 guards moved, and Nora stepped into their path, planting herself between them and a 58-year-old woman with a service cart, and did not move. A council member leaned into his microphone. "Miss Ashford, we are live streaming. I'd advise everyone to remain where they are." Lillian rolled the cart to the front.
Then she took a heavy ring of keys from her coat. The keys to Ashford House, every pantry and cellar and linen room of it, and set them on the signing table with a sound like a verdict. "I resign," she said. "Publicly, effective now. I surrender my staff housing, my benefits, and my pension claims, so that no one can say I'm speaking to protect them." Her voice never rose. 22 years of never raising it. 8 years ago, Mrs. Ashford ordered me to clear the Blue Room and destroy its contents. I didn't know what the documents were worth in a courtroom. I knew what it meant to burn the record of people's work. My father was a stonemason. Nobody ever wrote his name down anywhere. So I moved the boxes to a storage unit and paid for it myself. 6 months ago, when I saw the Heritage deal coming, I transferred everything to a bonded archival courier, sealed, so that no one, not Mrs. Ashford, not Mr. Reed, not I, could touch it or change it. She looked at the council.
"I can't tell you who designed what. That's not my knowledge. What I can swear to is this. These documents left the Blue Room, entered my custody, and have been sealed ever since. The chain is unbroken." Then she turned to me and held out her hand. In her palm was the brass key with the navy dot. "You'll want the original model, Mr. Reed." My hands were not steady when I broke the crate's seal. The model inside was smaller than the exhibition copy, rougher, mine in every cut. I turned it, found the seam, and the key slid home the way it had 14 years ago. Inside, the original changelog, every design decision dated and initialed. A contributor sheet listing 11 names, craftsmen, a junior designer, a landscape architect, all vanished from the official record. The transfer slip for Box 27, household format, and the removal order for the Blue Room archive, with the authorizing signature at the bottom, C. Ashford. The room made a sound I'd never heard a crowd make. Not a gasp, an inhale, held. Camille didn't fold. I want you to understand that because it matters. She stood straighter, and she went to work. "This is theft," she said. "Miss Hart removed corporate property, and Mr. Reed conspired with her. You saw him take her key at my gala. 8 years in a storage locker? Those papers could have been fabricated last month. And that box," her hand cut toward the cart. "Box 27 is household inventory. Silver counts, linen invoices, it's nothing." I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I asked her quietly,
the question that ended it. Camille, nobody here has said which box number is on that cart. The seals are unbroken. The label is face down. How do you know box 27 is here? She stopped. 1 beat. 2. And how do you know what kind of documents it holds? I said. If you never ordered it moved. She didn't confess. Camille Ashford will never confess. But 40,000 people watched her reach for an answer and find, for the first time in her public life, nothing. Her need to control the story had made her narrate a detail only its author could know. The courier's representative, who'd arrived with Lillian, confirmed the procedure for the record in under a minute. Intake date 6 months prior, seal numbers logged and intact, no access events, depositor and payer 1L Hart. He offered no opinion about guilt. He confirmed the chain, and he sat down. The council did not hand me a trophy. What they did was better because it was real. The chairwoman called an emergency session on the spot, and within the hour they announced the $180 million agreement was postponed indefinitely. An independent authorship audit would examine the sealed archive. Camille's authority to represent the project was suspended pending its outcome. Contractors who came forward would receive formal protection. And the Ellis Vocational Center's grant was removed from Camille's personal control and placed with the district trust. By that evening, Ashford House's board announced Camille would step aside as chief executive for the duration of the audit. Then it was my turn to choose, with the microphones still live. I did not ask for her company. I did not ask for the development. I asked for 5 things. Full credit restored to every contributor the audit identified, all 11 and any others. A compensation fund for people whose names had been erased. The household archive transferred permanently to independent custody. A binding guarantee that Lillian Hart would face no retaliation of any kind, and the Heritage District's public spaces protected in the plan, the way they were drawn in the beginning, for the community they were drawn for. The woman Camille had introduced to 400 guests as the Maid stood beside the cart while I spoke, hands folded, chin level. She had walked into that room with less power than anyone in it, and she left it as the only person there who had never once lied. 10 months later, the audit finished. It confirmed I was the lead conceptual designer of the first 2 Ashford projects, and confirmed that 10 other people had been erased alongside me. It also confirmed something harder. The transfer I'd signed remained commercially valid in parts. I didn't get everything back. Nobody rewrote the past. But the official history was corrected, the contributors were paid, and 11 names went back where they belonged. Camille wasn't ruined, she's still wealthy. But she is no longer the chief executive, no longer the face of the brand, and no longer the sole author of a story with 11 other writers. The civil processes will take years. I don't follow them daily. Her opinion stopped being the weather in my life. Lillian runs the archive now for the district's preservation trust. Salaried, titled, training young staff in document custody. She never asked to be a hero. She asks people to label their boxes correctly. And Nora and I did the slow work, counseling every week, finishing her center's restored building beam by beam. Learning that protecting someone and telling them the truth are not opposites, they're the same act, done bravely. 10 months after the ceremony, we were married in the center's main hall, under thresholds cast with the names of the students who helped build it. A small wedding. I wore navy. Nora walked in on her own, given away by no one, because she was never anyone's to give. Lillian kept the brass key through the ceremony. Afterward, she pressed it into my hand and nodded toward the new archive cabinet by the door, where the district's records now live. On its face, a small brass plate reads, "Every room has more than one maker. Remember their names." I looked at my wife, then I placed the key in her hand. I used to believe dignity meant staying quiet while the truth found its own way into the room. I was wrong. Truth needs a door. Sometimes it needs a witness. And sometimes it needs one brave woman pushing a service cart who decides she has been silent long enough. Before you go, I want to ask you something, honestly. What would you have done in my place? Used a private recording to guarantee the win, or protected your integrity even if it cost you everything? And tell me this. Who is one person whose work deserved more credit than they ever received? Put their name in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe. There are more truths waiting for a door.